What's up, zoners? Today, I'm going to be helping you decide which wide receivers should be in your starting fantasy lineups. That means I got the top 5 best and the top 5 worst wide receiver quarterback matchups heading into week 16, the second round of the fantasy football playoffs, man. You're looking at a chart right now supplied by ESPN.com, their wide receiver quarterback matchup cheat sheet, all right? Comes out free every Tuesday. I will have the link in the description below, man, so you can follow along. All right, man, starting off with the best matchups this week. We've got some sleepers, we've got some obvious names, and everything in between. The first player we're going to be talking about, man, like 3 100-plus yard games over the last 4? 4 touchdowns over the last 4 games? A.J. Brown, man. He was a huge bust for a month or two, and now he's coming on strong. He's going to get drafted high again, man. Am I going to own him next year? Nope. But hey, regardless, dude, this guy is not the slot wide receiver, so he only runs 11% of his routes out of the slot. That is the fewest amount by far on the Eagles. So he makes his living on the outside. His target share is the highest on the Eagles. 24 plus is elite percent. He's at 28%, man. And his efficiency just kept on going up and up and up. He's almost at elite there. So very, very good is 0.45 fantasy points per route run. 0.55 fantasy points per route run is elite. And he's closer to being than elite than the other one. So hey, man, A.J. Brown is doing amazing. And who does he get this week? I've talked about this guy for 4 months already. Mike Sainristil. I still don't know how to pronounce his name. That's my bad. But hey, he does cover the outside a lot. That's who's going to be seeing the most on one particular side. He might get away from A.J. Brown 50% of the time. Well, probably like 40% of the time in the slot. But the rest of the time, he's going to be seeing a ton of A.J. Brown. And he's covered. I mean, he's the most experienced cornerback on this team. 358 routes covered this year. Everybody else is at 130 or below, pretty much. And even with all those data points, giving up 0.45 fantasy points per route run. I swear that's like the highest in the league among cornerbacks that have covered like 150 plus routes, man. So one of the worst cornerbacks in the league, one of the best matchups that you could even imagine. And that's what we're chasing this week. All right, man. Next wide receiver we're going to talk about is somebody who I told you to draft, man. Got injured in the beginning of the year. Came back. He's actually been doing pretty well. His targets just keep on going down and down. I think he had 4 targets last week. He's got 2 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks, 18 plus fantasy points in 2 of the last 3 weeks. So if he's got a great matchup, I am going to be starting him no matter what. I don't care about the targets or who the quarterback is. I mean, newsflash, dude, it's going to be Marcus Mariota. All right, so Terry McLaurin is who we're talking about. He runs the fewest amount of routes from the slot. That is usually Deebo Samuel or nobody. As far as that is, he sticks to one side of the field the most at 77%, man. His target share right now, even with 4 targets last week, I think 6 before that, is still at 27%. So hey, that is elite, and he is almost as elite efficiency with those targets coming from Marcus Mariota, man, at 0.52 fantasy points per route run. So hey, man, Terry McLaurin is doing well. He just needs the targets right now, and that's not guaranteed. But hey, dude, he's going to go to a target funnel machine right now going against Adoree Jackson for the Philadelphia Eagles. So, I mean, we're going to look at this right now, dude. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell are amazing cornerbacks. Look at that. Red. They're both targeted 18% or fewer. So that forces the issue for opposing offenses to have to target Adoree Jackson, man. At 24% target rate. That's the amount he gets targeted, man. He's giving up 0.38 fantasy points per route run. Holy shit. That is a bad cornerback right there. So look for Terry McLaurin to have a huge game this week. And if he gets targets, oh my God, man, he could be like a top 5 wide receiver. I think he's going to get like 6 or fewer targets. So 15 plus points in fantasy, probably a really good wide receiver too. All right, man, next wide receiver we're going to be talking about came out huge out of their bye 3 weeks ago. 10 targets in back-to-back games. I want to say 12 plus fantasy points in each of the games after the bye, dude. So for 3 weeks, 2 touchdowns in those games. Courtland Sutton is finally the better start over Troy Franklin. Man, Troy Franklin was the start for a while there, but not so much the case anymore. And different roles on this offense. So to me, Denver is getting more aggressive as the season goes on, man. Everything was short in the slot in the beginning to Troy Franklin, and now they're starting to stretch the field. Greg Cosell was on the radio talking about the downfield shots they were doing, man, repeating, and how that is just tells you how much confidence Sean Payton is having, or trust with Bo Nix, and that's just growing. So more deep shots to Courtland Sutton. I see that continuing this week with a great matchup. So Courtland Sutton, only 19% out of the slot. Troy Franklin's 45%. Even Pat Bryan, 62% out of the slot. So Courtland Sutton's his own thing, man. He is the deep threat there. He is targeted 22% of the time, so still slightly less than Troy Franklin. But if you look at the last couple of weeks, much more targets than Troy Franklin. Not quite elite either one, but still very good target share. 0.40 fantasy points per route run. So he is the most efficient wide receiver on this team. That is just okay. I mean, that's good. I'll give you, that is good. I'd like to see that as 0.5 plus. And we'd be talking about a no-brainer wide receiver 2. But hey, over the last 3 weeks, he is a wide receiver 2 for you. And who does he get this week? So Jacksonville's got a great defense, right? Their cornerbacks are playing well. Jordan Lewis is their best cornerback, and he is the slot guy. So Courtland Sutton's going to be seeing Greg Newsome quite a bit, and he gets targeted 23% of the time, man. So almost 1 out of every 4 throws is going towards Greg Newsome. Again, so that if they throw the ball, if Bo Nix throws the ball 40 times, man, maybe 10 targets again to Greg Newsome and Courtland Sutton. He's giving up 0.43 fantasy points per route run. That is terrible, man. Anything over 4.0 is insane. And he's got a lot of data points. He is covered the most routes on this team at 321, man. So Greg Newsome, the worst cornerback. 2 other good cornerbacks. It's going to force the issue. That's why he's got such a high target rate right here. So Courtland Sutton should have 8+ targets and a very, very high end. Nah, I probably rank him in the 15. So high end wide receiver 2 this week. All right, man. Next wide receiver is going to be a first-round draft pick next season. He's either getting 15 fantasy points or 30+ fantasy points, 42 fantasy points, all right? And these are all with Dan Campbell calling the plays, I'm pretty sure. So Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown have benefited the most from Dan Campbell calling plays. And yeah, dude, another amazing matchup this week. I think it's versus Pittsburgh, but we'll talk about that in a second. He is the slot wide receiver here, running 55% of his routes out of him. His target share is like Jamar Chase with Joe Flacco type of shit at 32% target share, man. Jameson Williams not even breaking 18%, and his efficiency is at 0.61. So when you have that crazy target share, you wouldn't think he'd be that efficient. Oh my God, man. Higher than elite efficiency. Again, he's going to be a first-round draft pick next season. I'll draft his ass, dude. Please, give it to me. And who does he go against? Pittsburgh's only bad cornerback. All right, so I like it when I can just pick on one cornerback, especially in the slot, because Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to be the only person pretty much running routes out of the slot. Eagles right here plays the slot 62% of the time. Joey Porter and James Pierre don't really do it at all, man. 4% or fewer. And look at this. Look at the efficiency that they're giving up for Joey Porter Jr. Only 0.21 fantasy points per route run he's given up. On the other side, James Pierre, 0.17. So this kind of forces the issue to attack Brandon Eagles, all right? 20% of the time he is targeted. That's going to be like 30% this week, dude. So if Jared Goff throws the ball 30+ times, he's going to have like 9+ targets, dude. Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's going to be a bloodbath. Look for Amon-Ra St. Brown to maybe get the 30, probably get the 30+ points this week, not just the 15. All right, man, next wide receiver is a sleeper, and it does depend on Drake London's health. I think I saw that he was practicing today or trying to practice, so keep an eye on that. But if Drake London does not go, I'm going to be paying close attention to Sills. Sills is the slot wide receiver here at 45%. I'm not sure how that goes when London is out. But hey, man, right now, as it stands, he's got a great matchup. His target share is terrible, 11%. He had 10 targets last week. 0.14 fantasy points per route run. Again, that was like a 0.5 last week. Well, that's what we're chasing, man. We're hoping that Drake London doesn't play unless you're a Drake London owner. And then you can come pick up David Sills for cheap, right? And then who's he going to go against? Arizona's a team I've been targeting anyways because their defense is just not playing at all. And this is the worst cornerback on that team, and he just so happens to be the slot cornerback there, man. Look at this. Max Melton, 0%. Will Johnson, 0%. It's all Garrett Williams in the slot. So Sills will see this guy regardless, but he just won't get the target share if London is there. So we need the target. We need London out for the targets to Sills to take advantage of Garrett Williams, man. Garrett Williams only targeted 17% of the time. I mean, that's kind of surprising, but he's getting up 0.42 fantasy points per route run. All right. So yeah, Arizona is getting blown out, and it's just like they're just people. The problem here is they might get blown out by 14 points in the first half, and then they're just going to run the ball a ton. The Falcons with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. But right now, the sleeper is David Sills, right? He's going to be on a lot of people's sleepers list if Drake London's out. And now we can see he has an amazing matchup that might kind of force the issue to the slot as well. So this just kind of reinforces my belief in Sills being a sleeper this week without Drake London, borderline flex option, full PPR. All right, man, on to the worst matchups for wide receivers. And the first guy, 8 or fewer fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. Before that 2 weeks, he was wide receiver 2 in NFL fantasy football, man. So he was a league winner. He got you to the playoffs. And now in the playoffs, he's going to lose you weeks. It's insane. And now he's got a bad matchup. One of the worst matchups that you could possibly have against a defense that does not allow points. So George Pickens, man, is the outside threat here. CeeDee Lamb runs, almost 40% of his routes from the slot. George Pickens only 10%. His target share is still elite, man, at 24%. I think he had 9 targets last week against Minnesota. Not great, but that's Minnesota's defense has been playing amazing. About like the Chargers defense, who they're going against this week, man. So all the analytics for George Pickens are ridiculous, man. It was even higher 2 weeks ago. But we're living week to week right now, and I would not trust George Pickens with anything going against Dante Jackson and the Chargers, dude. So Dante Jackson right here is their shutdown cornerback. He plays on the outside 99% of the time. That's where George Pickens lives, right? He's only given up 0.16 fantasy points per route run, man. That is red. And he's at 256 routes covered. That's a lot of data points to be that good. He's only targeted 18% of the time, man. And then CeeDee Lamb gets Cam Hart, who is a great matchup and gets targeted 23% of the time, dude. So I expect George Pickens to have fewer targets and not be efficient with those targets against Dante Jackson. I'm telling you, man, I'm going to be ranking George Pickens as a borderline flex this week. If you have better options, man, I would start them. All right, man, next wide receiver. I told you to start him last week with a great matchup. I did not expect Mike Evans to get that many targets on his first game back. And Godwin did suffer from that, but he caught a touchdown, got you some points. It was actually okay. So I got bailed out there by that touchdown, but hey, whatever, dude. The targets were not there. I thought they were. But hey, this week he's got a bad matchup. He is the slot wide receiver running 48% of his routes out. And usually historically, Baker Mayfield slot wide receivers have been insane. Even Jalen McMillan when he filled in. So, I mean, I really, really, really want to start Godwin this week, but I'm probably not because of the matchup. His target share is at 22%. That is great, but it's not elite. 0.29 efficiency. That is the worst on the team, and that is bad, man. Egbuka his efficiency has been worse than that probably over the last 6 months, or 6 months, 6 weeks. But, the beginning of the year is just kind of pulling him up. And they're going against Carolina, man. And it's not like their defense has been allowing a ton of points anyways. And he's got to go against Chow Smith Wade, who has the lowest target rate for the Carolina Panthers. He lives in the slot at 89%, so he's going to be seeing a ton of Godwin. 0.24 fantasy points per route run he's given up, so that is not elite, but that's still not great. But dude, only targeted 15% of the time. That is elite. I don't like that at all. And then after a game with a good matchup for Chris Godwin, not that many targets, and now he's got a bad matchup. So to me, Godwin's going to be a borderline flex option, full PPR. Look for Mike Evans and Egbuka to get the most of the targets again this week. All right, man, next up, probably my biggest bust of the year as far as this guy fell to me in the second round. I thought it was great. My God, dude, that was one of the worst things that ever happened to me in fantasy football. Brian Thomas Jr. actually did well last week. He had 3 receptions for like 80-something yards a week before that. So 2 weeks with 6+ targets and maybe like 11+ fantasy points. All right, so we're looking good for Brian Thomas Jr. I love Jacoby Myers. He's actually getting the good target share over there. But Brian Thomas Jr., bad matchup this week, so I'm probably going to be ranking him as a flex option, maybe even lower than that. He is the outside wide receiver here because everybody else runs more slots from the more routes out of the slot than him. He's only at 27%. Parker Washington at 42. Jacoby Myers is the slot wide receiver there at 47%. Travis Hunter should be a big pickup next year. I need to look at Jacoby Myers' contract because they're both going to be playing out of the slot. But anyways, man, Brian Thomas Jr., his target share is still decent, 22%. That's actually really good. Again, elite is 24 plus. A lot of that was in the beginning of the season when he was getting like 10 targets a game, but not connecting at all. And his efficiency, again, not connecting at all, 0.30. The least efficient wide receiver for Jacksonville, man. So he needs a lot of targets to do stuff. And he's probably not going to be getting it against Patrick Surtain. All right. So Patrick Surtain is back. I don't know if you saw that interception last week where he landed on, I think he landed on Christian Watson and injured him. But that was an insane interception, man. So, and he is the outside cornerback. He's going to be seeing a ton of the guy I was just talking about. Why did I forget that? I wiped my eye on. Oh, Brian Thomas Jr. That's all he's going to see, dude. So Patrick Surtain only giving up 0.2 fantasy points per route run. And opposing offenses do not want to target this guy, only at 15%. So he is the lockdown corner of the NFL. All right. And we don't want to mess with that. Brian Thomas Jr., borderline flex this week. I'd probably sit him if I could. All right, man. Next up, a rookie wide receiver that's actually slumping at the end of the season. Usually they take off, man. So this is counterintuitive, and he might be injured this week. But even if he plays, I'm going to tell you not to play him, dude. Don't do it, because this is a Jalen Coker game if I've ever seen one. So Ted McMillan, he is the outside threat here. He only runs 20% of his routes out of the slot. Jalen Coker is the slot wide receiver at 63%. Ted McMillan still has a great target share right now, but he's been out-targeted by Jalen Coker 2 weeks in a row, and he's been outgained by Jalen Coker 2 weeks in a row. So trending down, man. 0.42 efficiency. That's still very good. So this is all from like the first 3 quarters of the season pretty much. But over the last 3 weeks, dude, it has been so bad for Ted McMillan. I am an owner of him. I did not expect this at all. Last year, Bryce Young went insane at the end. And I thought that was maybe going to happen again with Ted McMillan. But Bryce Young is still sucking. Jalen Coker is actually taking off. But who does Ted get this week? And he needs a great matchup. Jamel Dean, dude. We've been talking about Jamel Dean being one of the best cornerbacks all season long. And he plays on one side of the field 96% of the time. And look, dude, Ted McMillan plays on that. Sorry. Oh, my God. Ted McMillan plays on that side of the field 52% of the time. So pretty much 52% of the time, half the time, he's going to be seeing Jamel Dean. So he better make the most of his targets when he's not seeing Jamel Dean. And Jamel Dean right now, like I said, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, giving up only 0.17 fantasy points per route run. He's still targeted 19% of the time, which is funny because the other 2 cornerbacks here are not great. And there was a chart and some analytics data that just came out. And Tampa Bay's been allowing the most fantasy points to slot wide receivers, or to the slot in general, over like the last, since week 10 bye or something like that. So look for, because Ted McMillan doesn't even play that, look for Jalen Coker to be the wide receiver to own here, and Ted McMillan to not get many targets going against Jamel Dean, man. So Ted McMillan to me is a borderline flex option. All right, next wide receiver we're going to be talking about is going to be a first-round draft pick next year, no matter what. Dude, Puka Nacua had his worst game against Seattle this year. I mean, that was the worst game he had all year, was against Seattle. He had like 7 receptions on 70 yards or something like that. And now I think Devontae Adams might not play. I'll have to check that. So it might even get more attention towards Puka Nacua. And now this is at Seattle, and before it was at home. So look for him to even have probably his worst game of the year. This game right now in the second week of the fantasy football playoffs, not good at all. They do move him around a lot, which I love. 38% in the slot, 38% on one side, 23% on the other side. His target share is insane, man. Higher than Amon-Ra St. Brown's. 37% target share. That's why this guy's going to go like top 3 next season. And his efficiency, even with all those targets, is at 0.8. So one of the best wide receiver seasons like ever in fantasy football, pretty much. But he's got a bad matchup against Tariq Woolen this week, man. Tariq Woolen's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. This defense the secondary is one of the best secondaries in the NFL, man. So they want to avoid it in general. He only has a 16% target rate, dude. So that's not great. Puka, I think, only had 9 targets last time on those 7 receptions. 0.19 fantasy points per route run is given up. So he by far is the best cornerback for Seattle. He plays on the outside all the time. So, hey, maybe Puka Nacua gets lucky and gets to go in the slot. Dude, Weatherspoon's in the slot. He's almost just as good. So look for Puka Nacua to have his worst game of the season, but he's still going to be probably a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 in our rankings. All right, man, real quick, let's look at the scheme that these defenses are running, that the highlighted players with the good matchups are going against. And let's see if that gives us more confidence or less confidence to start these good matchup players, man. So, hey, A.J. Brown versus Washington Mike Sainristil. He is amazing versus man. 0.78 fantasy points per route run versus man. That goes all the way down to 0.34 fantasy points per route run versus zone. And Washington plays man the 12th most, which is higher than average. So look for A.J. Brown probably to have like a 20-plus fantasy point game this week. Huge smash. Terry McLaurin, man, versus Philadelphia, Adoree Jackson. He is much worse versus man than zone. 0.30 fantasy points per route run versus man. That goes all the way up to 0.47 versus zone. And Philadelphia plays man the 13th most. So even though Terry McLaurin has a great matchup and should get a lot of targets against Adoree Jackson, the scheme does not fit his game that well. So a slight decrease or a slight, hit to Terry McLaurin this week. Courtland Sutton versus Jacksonville, Greg Newsome. He is better versus man than zone. 0.44 fantasy points per route run versus man. Goes down to 0.33 versus zone. And Jacksonville plays zone the 11th most. So I do like Courtland Sutton, but he takes a slight hit as well because of the scheme, the zone-heavy scheme that Jacksonville runs. Amon-Ra St. Brown, man, versus man. 0.96 fantasy points per route run. So like every route that guy runs is almost a fantasy point on your team. It's insane. 0.49 versus zone. So much better versus man than zone, but still really good versus both. Pittsburgh plays man the 5th most. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to have 30 points this game. Oh my God. Take all the overs on Amon-Ra St. Brown. David Sills, man, our sleeper of the week. I'm probably not going to start him. We need to see what Drake London's doing. Better versus man than zone. He's going against Arizona, and Arizona plays zone the 14th most. So a slight hit to David Sills, but again, man, you're just hoping for some kind of weird outlier of a game. He is just a dice roll in your flex spot. All right, man. Hey, if you got any wide receivers you want to talk about, please comment down below, and I will get to it when and if I can, dude. Hey, hopefully I earned a thumbs up. Hopefully I earned a subscription. That's exactly what this show needs, man. The year's running out, and we need subscribers. Please, man. I'm begging you. Anyways, this is Tyler Big Turd Ward. This is a Fantasy Red Zone, and I appreciate